FlexiProject is a system that comprehensively supports the management of projects, project portfolios, programs, and strategy in organizations. Many companies already use our system, from industrial and manufacturing businesses through pharmaceutical and cosmetic companies to public administration units and international organizations with large-scale operations. It is also trusted by a wide range of service companies that successfully apply our software in their daily work. The system offers a broad range of applications and can be used regardless of the industry you are in. It is highly flexible. Our clients and users of the system primarily emphasize that the system is very intuitive to use. Moreover, 84% of our clients reported that the implementation of FlexiProject significantly improved the exchange of project-related information, and 80% believe that FlexiProject is well tailored to the individual needs of their organization. As a result, companies are able to execute projects better, faster, and in a more structured way. Our software operates on 3 fundamental levels. The first level is the PMO standards level. The system allows project coordinators and management staff to create repeatable processes and elements that support the standardization of project management within the company, while at the same time building a strong project management culture across the organization. Will these be documentation templates such as project cards or closures, modules for document management, creation of approval paths, or creating regular project reviews? At the stage of strategic project management, we are able to align our projects with the strategic goals of our organization, assess the attractiveness of these projects at a high level, organize them into portfolios, and also manage human resources in our organization. At the third, most basic and most frequently used level, the system supports day-to-day project and task management through an intuitive schedule, task lists, Kanban boards, as well as modules for managing risk, resources, and even budgets. Each of the 3 levels supports the organization, whether it is management or specialists, in fulfilling their key roles within projects. The intuitive task module provides all the key information employees need and enables smooth communication between project team members, so they know exactly what to do and can easily share information with their team. FlexiProject can easily be implemented within an organization in either a cloud-based or on-premise version, regardless of whether the company is just starting to build its project management practices or is already advanced in this area. The system also allows the active modules to be tailored to the specific needs of the organization. And so, some organizations may choose to use only some of the modules, while companies with more experience in project management can select other modules that will support the organization of project implementation and strategic goals even more broadly. Our software is constantly evolving. Approximately every 3 or 4 months, we release new versions of the software that include new features, which in most cases come from the feedback we receive from our customers. Our support is active and assists all users in daily use of the system, and the application itself is available in many languages. To show more possibilities of the FlexiProject system, let's move on to the system itself. We are in the FlexiProject system. The first window we will see is a list of all the projects we have in our organization. This list reflects all the projects in the organization, and we can group this list into appropriate categories. For example, after project stage, by project category, and adding more nesting of such grouping in this case by creating project category first, then priority, then department. This way, we can easily sort projects by views that are important and interesting to us. Project List View is highly configurable and can be adapted to our specific needs. If we want to sort this list by specific attributes, there is a filtering option that allows us to sort by various project attributes, many of which we can define ourselves, such as key suppliers. If we have key suppliers and would like to see where they are involved, we can obtain this information very quickly. This view is fully customizable. Thanks to the columns, we can set which information we want to see and which we do not. If we want to simplify this view and remove some information, we can do that and change the column order to suit our needs. This creates a clear list of projects within our organization. This view is visible only to us. Other users can independently configure it to meet their needs. Let's move on to an example project. As we can see, the first window that displays will be a list of all tasks, milestones, and project phases in our project. This view can be configured through columns, just like we did with projects. This view contains all the necessary information for schedule execution and supervision. In the WBS structure, we have tasks listed with start and end dates. In this case, we can also see that we have integration with Jira, from which some tasks originate. If we have data imported from an external system, they will also be visible here along with the details. We see the progress of the given task, as well as the assigned owners and additional attributes. In this case, it is specified which department is carrying out the given task. If we want to add a new task, after clicking New Task, we add new schedule elements. Also, if we are already working on a previously created structure of a given schedule, we can easily add a task by nesting it in different places in our schedule structure. Besides, not only tasks, but also milestones. We can also freely change the level of nesting of a place in the schedule of a given element, both through this panel and through the very convenient drag and drop. We can use this drag and drop to manage our tasks in a very easy way, expanding the schedule structure with phases, main tasks, and sub-elements, determining their sequence. The view that is here can also be presented on a Gantt chart, which is a timeline that intuitively shows us the tasks we have in the system, displaying their placement in time. Using another project as an example, I will show how the system can present tasks using a Gantt chart. As we can see, we have tasks here that we previously had on the list. In this case, they are mapped on the timeline. We have people shown who are responsible for specific tasks as task owners, and the arrows between schedule elements you see here indicate that there are dependencies set between the tasks. If we look at the entire Gantt chart, we can also see these rectangles. They show us the baseline plan for the project. Thus, we see that the baseline plan was for some tasks to occur earlier. This way, we can easily see that the current status of tasks is later than planned. So unfortunately, we have a delay on this project, which we can easily notice thanks to this functionality. We can modify this view by changing specific details. I will personalize my view by adding the task number and the task completion dates. We can remove the information about owners and simplify this view a bit by removing, for example, the baseline view. But something that might interest us is that we can show the resource load, that is, our employees assigned to tasks in the project. And also, if we want to make this view more interesting, we can color this chart, for example, by department or any other attribute. This gives us complete flexibility in customizing the visualization to match our specific requirements. A good thing for visual learners who can easily distinguish which task belongs to which department. The next view is the Kanban board view, which allows us to assign specific properties to tasks. In this case, the Kanban board is grouped by owners. However, if I wanted, for example, to work with the criticality of certain tasks, I see that at this moment in this project, I don't have a category assigned to these tasks. I am able to easily do this by changing the placement of a given task to a specific category. Thanks to this board, we can also easily configure work in agile methodologies by adding, for example, an attribute to tasks that will indicate at what stage of development a given user story or task is. By combining Kanban boards with traditional scheduling, we can work in hybrid methodologies combining different PM approaches. Let's go back to our task list and add a new task, which will be at the very end. This task will be recorded at the very end, at the very bottom of our WBS. Let's assume that this task should be in phase number 4, implementation. I easily move this task. In the next step, I will determine who should be the owner of this task. I can easily assign this task to one person or several people who will be responsible for it. Using a calendar view, I select the start date and the end date, And I am also able to determine how long the given employee will work on this task, indicating the time consumption of the task in hours. Adding time consumption is the first step to managing human resources and work time in the FlexiProject system. In this view, we also see that any changes or allocation additions are done in the context of our employee's workload, so I can see on which day our employee will work on this task and how much time it will take them. This provides real-time visibility into resource planning. If I wanted to change this option and decide that, for example, on a given day our employee should work more intensively, let's say for 7 hours, I can manually change this number to update my plan and schedule their individual workload. Returning to the details of the newly created task, I can also fill in the other details. As we can see, we have the time consumption calculated, which we defined a moment ago, but we can also specify other attributes. A large part of the attributes you see here are defined by me in the system settings. You can also create your own task attributes. In this place, we can also add task details, create subtasks for this task, and communicate with other users in the system, for example, by leaving comments, as well as track the history that allows us to undo individual changes. For a given task, we are able to add dependencies between this task and another when such dependencies exist within the project. We can also register work time and associate this task with specific budget items, which I will talk about later. Additionally, we can add risks or products that are to be realized within this task, or for example, convert this task if it is very important, into a milestone. We can also clone the task and remove it. If I want to be informed about a particular task and I'm not assigned to it as an owner, I can easily click on the bell icon, which will notify me of any changes in this task, either through system notifications or via email. When creating or editing a task, I am also able to add files or a link that will complement the details of the given task, and this accelerates file exchange between employees. From the perspective of people who manage projects, a very useful feature will be filtering this task list by specific owners or task status, according to other attributes, such as department or others that you configure in the system settings. This way, we can easily see who is responsible for which tasks or to which departments a given task is assigned. Let's assume that in the fourth phase of our new task, we would like to add 2 more subtasks. We can do this by adding a subtask. We are now adding the names of these subtasks. Also, if we click on the details of this task, we can add many other subtasks from this level, which is useful when we are developing large projects with many parent tasks and multiple subtasks. As we can see on the full list, such subtasks have appeared for us. The system also automatically counts the percentage of completion of both the given tasks and, as you can see at the very top, the entire project, based on the degree of completion of the subordinate elements of the schedule. If I scroll down to my task and click as marked, I can see that changes have automatically been applied here. I can also manually change the degree of completion by going into the task details and specifying, for example, that the task has been completed 70%. Let's assume that while managing our project, we would like to change some details regarding the schedule in a situation where we want to, for example, shift a project phase in time. If I switch to the view, I can easily work on the schedule by moving elements using drag and drop, changing the position of elements on the timeline. And then also any changes we have that I make, which result from the dependencies between tasks, will be automatically recalculated. We can manage all changes in the schedule easily this way, and we don't have to manually change dates in the schedule in case of delays or time shifts of given tasks. If I go to a given task, I see that Emma Evans is responsible for it. Using the commenting module, I can tag such a user and send her a notification. This way, Emma Evans will be informed that she has been tagged in a comment and will know that she should respond to such a mention. From this level, we can also add attachments to tasks, files or links, for example, to external repositories. If we look at what else we see in our system, we have access to a management dashboard that summarizes the most important information about our project: its condition, stage, progress, when the last project review was, as well as data from the budget or schedule. In this way, we can track the most important indicators of our project from one place, which is particularly useful for management personnel. We have already gone through the schedule. Let's move to the Budget tab. The Budget tab allows us to easily group our expenses and revenues in the project by indicating the current totals of planned costs or revenues, showing us any deviations, and assigning a given expense to the cost center. Categorize these expenses by the given category, as well as indicate whether it is a CapEx or OpEx expense. If I want to add a new expense, I click New Expense, give it a name, and that expense will appear at the very bottom of the list. I can easily create an organized structure by assigning a given expense or income to a category, so that my expense list has an organized structure. If I want to create a new category, I'm adding a new expense to the list, for which I create a child. And I see that a new category appears with sub-element for them. We can obviously filter this view, for example, by whether a certain cost is already paid or is still just a forecast, adapting the view of the full list of our costs and revenues to current needs. This view changes only for us. In this view, I can also filter expenses by dates. In the column settings, I choose which details regarding individual budget elements should be visible and which should be hidden. After clicking on a given budget element, its details appear. I see here the amount, the date of a given expense, when it will occur. This icon shows that the date is linked to a schedule item. This means that the expense will have the same execution date as the task on the schedule. In this case, it is a task related to the workshop. If the date of the linked task changes, the date of the expense or revenue will also be updated accordingly. From this level, I can also change details such as cost center, expense type, and all other additional criteria, add a description, and, for example, an attachment. In the history, I can also see all the changes that occurred. At the bottom, we also have a field for leaving comments on the budget element. Thanks to the Comments module, I can communicate with other employees. I can easily switch this view from a list view to a timeline view, where I can see my upcoming project expenses organized monthly. With settings, I can simplify this view as needed. Currently, we see the current expenses, but I can also track deviations here. If we previously had a planned budget and specified how much certain expenses would be, and if their cost changes, their value, then in this case I will see all deviations also in this view, which I can change to a quarterly view or, for such long projects, to an annual view. If we return to our expenses, I see that we have expense 1 here in our new category. Let's add the amount of $60,000 and set the date to the 26th of September. Now I will create a link between this newly added expense and a task from my schedule. I select the schedule element from the list of all tasks and milestones with which the task should be linked. I click Confirm. In the next step, I can specify whether it concerns the start date or the end date along with some delay in this date. And when I click Save, I see that such an expense is linked to a schedule element. If I return to my schedule, here we have the budget column, which shows us that the given task is linked to some expense. Having discussed the budget module in detail, let's move on to other functionalities of FlexiProject. The next module is the Risk module, which allows us to intuitively predict and manage risks in the project. Even the best planned project can face some risks, and this tab enables us to manage them well. Upon entering the Risks tab, the first thing we see is a summary of all our risks in the form of a probability and impact matrix. If I wanted to select some risks that interest me the most, I can use this list to go to a specific category to see which risk is assigned to which place in this matrix. However, if I go to the overall result, I see the name of such a risk, its status, and whether it is active. I can see the person responsible for the given risk, whether the given risk is related to any schedule element. When accessing such a risk, I see its details, which are the elements I can set and change, as well as a description and action plan for the risk. Here we have a detailed description of what this risk involves. Further, explanations on how this risk affects the schedule, the budget, and the final product of our project. I can also conduct discussions here about this risk and, for example, add attachments. From this level, I can obviously remove the risk, but I can also add an attachment in the form of a file and a link to an external repository or website with additional information. If I don't want this diagram view, it's an easy way to just stick to a regular list, which of course I can modify accordingly to suit my needs. If I plan a meeting with certain people and would like to know if they manage risk well, I can sort it by data on, for example, people or categories. Similarly, as with budget items, if I go to my schedule, I see here that there is a risk column. And if we have a certain risk associated with a schedule element, such as a task or subtask or phase, then such risk will appear here for me. For risks that are active, it will display with a red fill, suggesting that this risk is active and needs to be seriously addressed during the execution of our project. Most likely, we will be producing some products. These could be either physical items that we manufacture if we run a production company, or they could be, for example, process maps, more complex reports, or other more complex elements. The Products tab allows us to create lists of products that are to be developed as part of our project. In this tab, we see the entire list of products with assigned owners, and also if a given product is linked to a schedule element. We see the Schedule tab and the planned completion date. Upon entering the details of a given product, we can see its description, the execution method, the steps that need to be taken, acceptance criteria, as well as the ability to add attachments. These can be in the form of final deliverables, templates, or, for example, best practices. Useful if we have completed a similar product before and want to demonstrate to our team how to execute it effectively. Similarly to the budget and risks, here I am also able to present a Products tab on the schedule if a given product is linked to a budget element. From these three elements, namely the schedule, budget, and risk, we are able to create project templates. Let's assume that in our organization, repetitive projects are ongoing, where the basic stages are repetitive and the projects have a similar cost structure, face certain risks, and specific sets of products need to be completed. Using templates, I can create a new project by selecting one, and the system will automatically import the schedule and other details. By choosing a given template, I am able to determine when setting up a new project which elements in my system I would like to use. For example, let's assume I wouldn't want to use work time, scoring, and the plan. When I click Next, I have access to a preview of such a schedule, and by clicking Add this project, it will be added with the assigned schedule structure. In the case of my template, I also have initially assigned people as well as the entire list of products, tasks, and risks or budget items. And yes, of course, I can edit this schedule as needed. Using templates significantly saves time, especially if our projects in the organization are repetitive. This way, project managers save time not having to create a new schedule from scratch. Besides the option to access the list of projects and project templates, the system also has the option to create project programs. If we wanted to create a schedule not for one project, but for several projects, and keep the schedule in one place, as well as create connections between schedule elements from different projects, we create project programs. I will show you what an example program looks like. Here we can see all the projects that are added to my project program along with the assigned project managers and start dates, end dates of entire projects. After expanding, a complete schedule of the program will be created for me, of course with a breakdown into specific component projects. After switching to the Gantt chart, I will see that I've created dependencies, and these are dependencies not only between tasks within a single project, but also between tasks from different projects. So if we have many projects in our system and we would like to create dependencies between such projects, the system provides us with this capability. Let's create a new program. Here we select all the projects we would like to add to our program. I want to point out that these are all the projects that are in progress, have a condition at risk, and I would like to select these projects. I click Add Save and such a program appears. Upon entering the Gantt chart, I see the details concerning these tasks. and if I have created certain dependencies between these tasks, I click Recalculate Dependencies to apply them in the program. Just click, and the system will show all tasks that, due to dependencies between tasks from different projects, are shifting relative to the originally planned dates. This way, we can create large schedules for many interrelated projects in a comprehensive way. Let's return to our example project. The Chat tab allows project team members to communicate easily, reducing the need for email exchanges about tasks or ongoing work. In the chat window, I have many options for creating messages. I can add attachments, photos, graphics, links, and also tag users here. The next tab, called Project Charter, allows us to easily manage crucial project documentation. After entering this tab, I have access to both approved documents and drafts. As we can see, we already have several accepted project charters, as well as one document I've been working on recently. Let's check what the documentation looks like in my example project. If I take a look at what such a project charter looks like, it is a document that contains all the most important information about my project. If I look at a not yet approved card, in this case, it is the project closure card, then here I am also able to add more details regarding my document. The system allows us to send a given element for approval through a defined acceptance path. If I want to approve this document, I can choose a specific acceptance path that it must follow before becoming an official document according to my organization's policy. If we accept a given project charter where we have defined the project schedule and budget, then this project charter will be linked to our new baseline. Baseline means that we agree, either internally or with the client if there are any arrangements, on the specific implementation of the schedule and budget, with set dates and amounts. I already mentioned that, for example, in the case of the budget, we are able to clearly show the baseline and the exact difference between the current state and the baseline values. This is because when we have an accepted baseline, if I go into the details, I can see that we have accepted baselines for the schedule and a fully confirmed specific budget. I can also, of course, see how the accepted budget looked and how the project charter linked with this baseline looked according to the baseline plan, as well as by whom it was submitted, how it was accepted, and specific dates with details. Having such a baseline allows me to diligently track any deviations, whether in the schedule or the budget. Let's assume that as a project manager overseeing its execution, I would like to compare the planned start date with the current start and end dates. As we can see in the case of these tasks, most things match. However, let's look at what happens here. The task actually started on the 6th of May, but it was planned to start on the 4th of April. It ended on the 8th of May, but it was supposed to end on the 8th of April. Differences from our established baseline can also be seen in the Budget tab, which allows us to track changes in the budget. If we have a difference of $142,000, it exceeds what we originally planned for our project. Such a difference will be displayed in red, indicating an overspend on the budget. Similarly, if something turns out to be actually cheaper, for example, if we change this here to $5,000, it will show me in green that we have a difference of $25,000 on this particular expense. These sums will, of course, be totaled here both for the overall expenses and revenues in our system, as well as for individual categories. On the Gantt chart view, our baseline plan will also be visible in the form of these rectangles that now appear and disappear. If we hover over a task relevant to the schedule element, we see that we have the current start and end date, as well as the baseline start date and baseline end date. It allows us to track deviations from the schedule and see exactly how the current state compares to the previous state. Let's assume that in the course of work, project implementation, and agreements with my client, I would like to accept a new baseline plan that will account for these changes and deviations. We have approval to modify the budget and schedule. I can create a new baseline. I determine whether I want the changes to relate to the schedule or the budget. When approving such a new baseline plan, I also see the deviation I am suggesting. I see that the baseline end date was previously August 29th, and now it will be March 3rd, 2026. The same applies to the budget. I am able to add specific details here. When accepting such a baseline card, I can decide whether it will go through the acceptance path or simply be approved by the project manager. After acceptance, if I click Save, I see that the baseline has appeared, and in my budget, I no longer see information about deviations because we have accepted a new baseline for the project. However, of course, if I go back to my list of baselines, I am able to display certain changes that occurred here using charts, as well as return to my historical baselines to compare them between subsequent editions. Thus, we have a complete history of our project preserved in the system. The next tab, Tasks, visible on the left. It is available to all system users. It shows all the tasks I need to complete. We see here the name of a given task, the start date, and the end date. If the end date is later than today, such a task will be displayed in red, indicating that we have a delay. I also see the source of such a task. If a given task comes from another person, or I created it myself, it will be indicated as a derivative of the actions of the given user. I am able to filter the given task list by dates, as well as change the view of this list. If it is more convenient for me, I can show only the name of the task that needs to be done. I can also display the tasks that have been completed, although they are hidden by default. I can show all the tasks here that will appear to me first. These are the tasks that were simply the earliest. These tasks will appear here, marked as completed. If I add a new task, it will show up at the very bottom. Because it is a task that currently has no assigned dates, such tasks, not coming from projects, are called operational tasks. This means it is a task not linked to any project, but one I can use, for example, to organize my own work in the form of a to-do list. If I assign such tasks to another user, it will mean that this is a delegated task, in this case for Emma Evans. If I go to Delegated Tasks, I see here a full list of non-project tasks that I have delegated to other employees. Such a task can also become a recurring task. If I wanted, for example, a task to be done every month, I can create such a task cycle, and it will simply reappear each time with a new date every month, so I don't have to keep creating new tasks for regular activities. From here, I also have access to other tasks that I'm following, marked with the bell icon. So the system will send me notifications, which will appear here, about all new changes in these tasks I'm monitoring. The system displays notifications within the app, while from the user settings level, I can configure email notifications. Whether it's tasks that are starting, tasks that are ending but haven't been completed yet, overdue tasks, and other elements. Such reminders can improve my work simply by additionally informing me that something important has happened in the system. From this level of user settings, I can also change my picture, the name displayed in the system, change the password, and the interface language. As you can see, we have a lot of languages to choose from in the system. I can switch the theme from light to dark and also see what license I have assigned in the system. I'll talk about licenses in a moment. In every part of the application, a help window will be visible in the upper right corner as a contextual window. Depending on where we are in the system, it will suggest what more I can learn about a given tab. If I go to another tab, this list changes according to the application area we are currently working in. From this level, I can go to the user guide, open the FlexiProject blog to read more about project management and also access the support window. From there, we will be able to contact our support team. Returning to our project, we have a Resources tab that shows us the load of our resources in the project. How much scheduled work do they have in hours and for which individual elements? This way, we can track the workload of our employees, and similarly, in the Work Time tab, we can track the recorded working hours of our users in the system. If, as an employee, I want to record time for my project, I go to the given task, open its details, and by clicking on the 3 dots, I can record the working time. Let's assume I worked for 6 hours. I spent it on Project Plan. I can, of course, comment here on what exactly I was working on. The resources and work time in this case pertain to this particular project. Meanwhile, on the left side, if I take a look, I can see that there is also a Resources tab, which in this case will show me the global workload for all my employees and collect aggregated data from all projects. If I enter a given user, I can see what projects they are working on, what tasks, and check if there is too much work for a given day. I can see if there is any overload, which then, if it actually happens, I am able to change the task to another day, for example, so that my employee is not overloaded. In the case of the Work Time tab for the entire system, I see all the hours registered by my user, the one I'm logged in as, or the one I choose from the list, on what I actually worked in a given month. I can, of course, group it by projects or, for example, by tasks, as well as export such a view or display it on a timeline, where I can see all the details. Going back to the last tab we have not discussed yet, in FlexiProject we have the Scoring tab, which allows us to evaluate the attractiveness of various projects based on defined indicators. Here we see a diagram showing the scores assigned to a project on the attractiveness scale along with the assessment criteria. We can modify the criteria ourselves through the PMO Scoring tab. I can create a new scoring template by changing the questions, determining who should answer those questions. For example, if we have specific specialists in our system who will evaluate the attractiveness of these projects, we can also determine the scale on which a given project will be evaluated. Here I can define my respondents and see published scorings. On the PMO tab, we have the option to edit the templates of our project charters, which I showed earlier. If we go to such a project charter template, we see that it consists of editable blocks, each containing specific information coming from the system. A large part of this information, such as department project priority or project team, will be filled in automatically if we complete this information in the project settings. Certainly, if we want to edit such a template, we can move elements, add individual fields that interest us, and independently create a document template. It all works on a drag-and-drop basis and allows us to freely design the layout of such project charters. The system gives us a lot of options here, from simple formats to complex documents with a large number of details. As we can see, we already have several different examples of such cards in the system. We have a project charter, but we also have, for example, a technical documentation charter, which will be a slightly simplified version concerning the technical specification. A key function in the system is project reviews. When managing many projects, managers want regular updates. Project reviews aggregate information from specified projects, and for project charters, we can create templates for review cards. We have a monthly review card that will collect basic information from our projects. If I send such a card to be filled out, then the project manager will have to fill in the missing fields that do not fill in automatically, such as key project events, issues to be decided next month, and most important project issues, which will show us the status of a given project. Let's see a completed project review. Here is one that is closed. Overview of optimization projects. We have the date of the review and can see the state and stage of the projects at that time. Here we have project stage, condition, milestones. By going in, we can check the milestones, see any deviations from the baseline, track project progress, and view the planned completion date. Of course, I can modify this view. If I wanted to see other information, I can definitely define from the list what really interests me, what I would like to see in such a view. Such things will appear here. We can switch to the report view in graphic form, which will show us graphs and indicators in an attractive visual form, charts, diagrams, counters, which of course will show the status derived from those projects that were under review. Here we have another review that I changed with a slightly larger number of projects that we are viewing. If we want to create such a review, I click New Review. I can choose a template for such a review, the date for which the review is to be completed. Assign the review to a group we can see here, for example, and add a description. I add projects using the project filtering function based on their attributes. For example, if I wanted to see those projects that have a condition at risk, I can select all, click Add, and such a review will be created. Importantly, if this review is open, the data updates continuously, and if progress changes before it's closed, all information updates accordingly. This will continue until the review is closed, at which point the data is fixed for that moment. At the same time, I can preview the review card with information that project managers have added and continue to add in real time. However, if I want to close the review, once all the information is ready, I can click Archive. At that point, this review will not be available for editing, and we see the status archive, which shows the state of those projects as of August 17th, the day the review was archived. The results of such a review configured here can also be exported. On the left side, we also have the Project Portfolios tab, where projects are grouped into portfolios. These are designed to support, for example, the achievement of broader business objectives or other organizational goals. In the case of the example project portfolio, I see similar detailed information to the review, but here it is always fully up to date and updates in real time with any ongoing project changes. Of course, I can view key details such as milestones, as well as other important and configurable information that I can add and customize as needed. In the case of the schedule, I see an aggregated schedule of the project portfolio. When I hover over it, I see details about the start date, end date, baseline, duration, and so on, as well as the baseline being reflected similarly to the schedule for a single regular project in the form of such rectangles. Importantly, I can point out not only the current baseline here, but also the very first baseline there ever was. I can color these projects based on, for example, priority and filter the data, which creates the desired visual layout of the portfolio schedule. For example, if I am only interested in strictly defined projects assigned to the portfolio that meet certain criteria. Now let's move to the portfolio budget. Here I will see the aggregated budget for all those projects, including the total amount and the percentage of completion of the portfolio budget. And just like in the Budget tab, I see the baseline and deviations. I'll show this for all projects in the portfolio since the selection we made earlier is still active. Here we can already see it for the entire portfolio, and the same applies to the Risks tab. Here I will see all the risks that I have in this project portfolio. So, if we wanted to manage projects and their associated risks at a more high level, this is what allows us to do that. If I go to the Summary tab, I see here a graphical report that summarizes all the information regarding my project portfolio. I am able to modify this view accordingly. By moving certain blocks, I can change this appearance, as well as add another chart that interests me from the project information. The next module in the system is the Strategy module. If in our organization we want to manage the implementation of strategic goals, I can define them with a clear name, detailed description, and measurable indicators that accurately reflect progress, as well as list projects that actively support each goal. This represents the highest, most comprehensive level of management that I can implement and effectively work with in the system. I can freely add new goals as well as group them. As you can see, we have two groups of strategic goals here, and I can track the specific indicators already assigned. I can see all the listed indicators connected to these goals, along with their initial state, current status, and the expected value upon achieving the strategic objective. This module is a significant convenience for management staff who would like to manage strategic goals in their organization in a very transparent and intuitive way. The next tab is the Reports tab, which allows us to extract detailed information from the system in the form of reports. During project work, the system collects a lot of useful data, and understanding this data helps improve our project management. We can create many different reports depending on what project data we need. For example, if I want to show a report where the project stage equals in progress and includes all products, I can create such a report. The system quickly returns the desired data, and I can add other columns that, for example, display the description of each product. For now, such a report will be visible only to me, but I can share it with others. We can also create budget reports such as estimated costs and revenues in the production department. If I enter here, I see all the budget items I have for the given department. Creating each report is done by setting logical filters that display the data we want to extract from the system. In this case, the status of such an expense is forecast, and the cost center equals production. Such a report can be especially useful if we want to gain insights into cost data. If we want it to change, We could, for example, specify that we are only interested in expenses, not revenues. And here, the list will automatically update based on that. In this view, we can group reports and save ready-made data sets. We can create new groups and new reports as needed. We are able to export the details of a report, so if, for example, we have a financial report to share with someone else, such as the finance team, clicking Export will generate an Excel file for more advanced financial calculations. Let's move on to the Administration tab, from which we as administrators can manage our entire system. With administrative access in the system, we can access a list of users, including their username, email address, license type, and information about their activity in the system. If I want to change an employee's license, I can easily switch it from a full license to a free or standard license within my assigned limit. In the case of a standard license, we have a predefined set of permissions for a given user. While with a full license, I am able to assign such a user to permission groups, for example, to divide users in our system into specific groups with certain competencies in the system. I am also able to manually change permissions for individual elements. From this level of the system, or specify that a given user is a system administrator. The admin has access to all functionalities and data in the system. I mentioned project groups. In my system, I have a tech governance group created, and as we can see, if we assign a specific user, here we have 2 users, they will have exactly this type of permissions. So we don't have to manually add permissions for users in our system every time. It significantly improves our workflow. If, for example, we need to add a large number of users and we don't want to manually configure all the permissions in the system, I can easily assign such a person to a group and describe the group appropriately, add an avatar to it, for example. The second level at which we define permissions in the system is in the permissions and role settings within a specific project. As we can see in the Roles and Permissions tab, we define the project team composition and see who is active in my team, as well as change settings for permissions for item owners. This means, if a person is assigned exclusively to a task, I can change what that person can edit in such a task. For example, I will uncheck that a person assigned to a task, if they have no other permissions, cannot edit the name and owners, but will be able to change the progress, date, and other information. Returning to my settings, I go here to the System Settings for administration in the system. I am able to define basic roles and project roles in my system. For example, what tech governance, steering committee, or other groups should have in their permissions and adjust them accordingly also from this level. I can define certain stages here that projects will go through, which sequentially organize the project lifecycle from idea to closure, set project conditions, and add new fields, such as strategic pillar or project category, which will be assigned to my project list, allowing me to sort these projects accordingly. Then I can add new fields to the schedule, such as task criticality or supplier country, which can be filled in on the schedule view of a given project. From this level, I can also filter these tasks accordingly from the schedule if I need to categorize different types of tasks. The system also allows me to set up budget settings, types of expenses, or, for example, cost centers. I can change the way of displaying or describing and categorizing my project risks. Specify whether I want to use the Work Time tab at all and others, such as resources. I can decide whether I will use reviews, scoring, project charters, products, or strategies in the system. From this level, I can also create a connection with Jira or Entra ID, Active Directory, and view basic information about my system. In the Dashboard tab on the main panel, I will see the most important information about all my projects. As you can see, the system allows for a very wide range of work with projects, project portfolios, and strategy modules. So I wanted to encourage you to take advantage of the options the system offers. If you are interested in our system, feel free to let us know. We are happy to help not only with getting started in the system, but also with configuring the system for your business processes. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you fruitful work with the FlexiProject system.